Well, that's off to a great start. It'd be good if I clicked the right button to start with. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to LUMIX Live for this week. This is the last, what I want to say is like full live stream for this year. Next week's live stream, as I said down in the description, is going to be a partially recorded stream. Because I'm finally getting to the studio strobe and the pocket strobe kind of conversation with the cameras. So to make sure that I keep that on track and I kind of get my thoughts across properly, I'm going to be recording some of that partially so I don't really have enough space in here to kind of really do it the way I want to. So next week we will be live, but it'll be mostly a pre-recorded with questions after. So yeah, I wanted to use this week's stream just really as kind of a year-end AMA and kind of just like a hangout to chat with everybody. Address the questions that y'all have, and just talk about LUMIX in general. As always, I do have a camera hooked up, so we can talk about certain features. I can demo some of it. Like I do know I did get one question ahead of time about 32-bit float audio and how to do it on the cameras, so that's why I have my GH7 hooked up here. So we'll have that. We'll go over that as well. But yeah. Biggest thing for today's stream, if you have questions and you want to chat with us, kind of just ask us whatever questions you want. Make sure to tag at LUMIX USA. You can see DJ's doing it, Dustin's doing it. Just tag us with what questions you've got, and we will work to try to address as many of them as I possibly can. As a disclaimer, for those that have joined us before, but maybe those that have not joined us, questions about future products, future firmware updates, things like that, I will not answer. Even if I do know them, I can't answer them, and likely there's nothing to talk about. So, yeah, so we'll jump into that in a second. I want to remind those in the United States about LUMIX Pro Services, like I do every single week. LUMIX Pro Services, if you've purchased a LUMIX camera, is a great addition to your purchase. The red tier is free. So if you've purchased a camera, especially now that we're in the holiday season, if you've just purchased a camera, you can follow the QR code on the screen, or you can follow the link down in the description. Get yourself registered on Rhett. You get your 3-year extended warranty just by registering there. So it makes sure you get yourself covered should anything from a warranty covered thing happen between now and the end of those 3 years. If you're someone who likes an added level of service and support on your products, you can always upgrade to the Platinum tier once you're registered in the program. That's going to be a paid level service that's going to get you 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. So you get expedited service and support. You also get access to 20% off out of warranty repairs, so drops, breaks, things like that wouldn't be covered under warranty. You get a discount on those to lessen the burden there. You also get annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all that kind of fun stuff to keep your equipment in tip-top shape. And for those that don't like to use chat systems or emails for communication, you do also have access to a phone hotline, member hotline. So if you'd rather speak to somebody, I believe it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time on the U.S., Monday through Friday. So you have access to that as well. So I encourage you to take a look at those, especially if you bought a new camera. Get yourself at least on the red tier. It's free. You don't need anything to be part of it. Just make sure you register your camera. And it kind of makes no sense to not get yourself that 3-year extended warranty on it as well. So with that, let's kind of jump into this a little bit here. So right before the stream started, we had a comment. And comments are good too. If you want me to see your comment, tag at LUMIX USA. V says, please implement a quick photo rating system. Swipe left to reject and swipe right to keep. It's an interesting concept. The biggest, I'd say like downside here, is that the camera's touchscreen it is active while you're in playback. So swiping left moves to the left photo, swiping right moves to the right photo. So a touch interface isn't really gonna make sense there. For those that don't know, we do have a rating system within the LUMIX cameras. It is in there by default. So if you are in playback on an image, you have the ability to actually program your function buttons specifically to the playback side. to do different things than they would do in the recording mode. So this would be under the settings and play mode. By default, you'll see that the AF on button is a star rating, and you have a rating from 1 through 5. You also have the ability to protect images this way. So as I'd say, I guess as a compromise for what you're asking about, you do have the ability to come in here and, kind of assign ratings. So, say you want to use star as your, or star 5 as your, like, okay, these are keepers, but then maybe I want to move and have, star rating of 1 be the images that I don't care about. You can do that on the fly just by programming those buttons there. And again, the nice thing is that these are only isolated to the playback side of the camera, so they don't change any of the function buttons that you have already set for other things. This would work great for that kind of thing. In fact, on my main camera, the S5 Mark IIX that I've been using, I do have it set up this way so that I can easily jump back and forth and say, like, as I'm reviewing, yeah, this is a keeper. I also have a 3 in there for ones that maybe I'm not so sure of. So then I can go in when I load these into Lightroom or Capture One or whatever program I'm using for my raw editing. I can then just filter and I'm good to go. So hopefully that helps, and that's a good compromise for what you were asking for, V. Let's see here. DJ, can you tell us about the move of releasing the G97 and the TZ or ZS99? Why did Lumix refresh old models with some new features, and why was the launch so low-key? Tell us about compliance in cameras. Very loaded question there, DJ. So, yeah, the G97 and the ZS or TS99, depending on what part of the country or world you're in, are, kind of moderate refresh cameras. Typically, as we've kind of moved through the development of, modern cameras across the board, there are some core things that are just, I would say, kind of expected in 2024 when it comes to things like input outputs. So USB-C being one of them, much more robust, way more, kind of proliferated into the world now. So getting those cameras updated with a USB-C connection is a big kind of piece of it. In some regions, now I'm not 100% because I don't study the compliance side of, why things happen or what the points are there. I will leave the internet to speculate on all sides about what the various rules and laws mean in different regions. But the upgrade to USB-C, a lot of times things like that come down to components, right? You want to keep a camera running for much longer because it's selling well. So you want to extend the life cycle because people are clearly looking for that kind of tier of camera. You upgrade them to make them fall in line with what is kind of expected within the modern era. As you've seen over the last couple of years, various different manufacturers have come out with what we consider as like our D model, typically. And other companies call them different numbers as well, where, maybe a certain component has gone end of life and it's not accessible anymore. So you need to make a change, which then means that you have to change the part number for them to be sold because it's not what the original product was. That can be screen resolution, the type of screen that's being used, whether or not the ports work the same. All of those things kind of come into play that when you've got products that are selling well, you kind of have to do the things you can to keep those within market. So, a G97 and the TS or ZS99, I think are a good example of that. A lot of people I know get kind of caught up in that every new camera that comes out, has to be the top of the line, the best thing out there, and it has to be built for me. I'm guilty of that as well. But the fact of the matter is, cameras that get updates like this tell you one thing. They're selling really well, and they want to be kept in the lineup, so they get an upgrade. They get the upgrades needed to maintain that product in the market so that people have options. So, that's why those cameras got updated. There were things we could do really quickly to be able to keep them in market, so we did it. Now, why was it so low key? Well, part of it's because they're minor refreshes. These aren't, flagship spec cameras. These aren't, the top tier. So when you go for certain things like that, or you release products like that, not everything needs the kind of fanfare, right? Sometimes products come out because there's just a demand for them and it's there. YouTube community, the reviewer community, the Facebook forums and all that kind of stuff. A lot of times we have challenges pulling ourselves apart from, like I said at the beginning, cameras that come out that doesn't matter if it's built for me. There's a market out there and there are people that are looking for those products. So they just get built. Not everything has to be, shouted from the rooftops. So this one was a little bit lower key because it's a minor update. That's kind of really just how plain and simple it is. And then the last part of your question about the compliance in cameras, that's one of the areas that honestly, I wish I knew more about what the rules and compliance and regulations and all that kind of stuff are. I know the conversations about USB-C and charging and all of that kind of stuff are constantly discussed online. What I would encourage people to do is, if you are that interested in the reasoning or what the law means, and in the U.S., this isn't, to my knowledge, this isn't anything in the U.S. Talk to a lawyer. Talk to someone who actually knows and studies that type of law and that kind of thing. Because I can guarantee, asking around on forums, you're not going to get a consensus on an answer, and you're probably never going to even come close to what the actuality of those kinds of things are. That's why people are specialized in their fields that know exactly what these things mean, and companies employ people like that to make sure that products are kept in compliance if and when they ever should need to. So, that's kind of about it. It was a really long-winded answer, but hopefully that addressed your questions there, DJ. Let's see. Dustin says, can the autofocus calculate the average speed of an unladen swallow while it is shooting it and transfer that information to be embedded via metadata so I can use it for scientific purposes? It's going to depend on if the swallow is an African or a European swallow. At that point, I think coconuts are involved. Yeah. If people don't get that reference, I apologize. Look up Monty Python. Good question, though, Dustin. DJ, a 2025 wish. Can Lumix announce planned products closer to their release? The telephoto zoom on the roadmap has been hanging there forever, and some of us plan our purchases based on it. As far as like product roadmaps and stuff like that go, I don't think you'll ever see a change in that kind of thing. Product roadmaps are a very delicate balance for manufacturers in general. If you look at all manufacturers across the board, some publish roadmaps, some don't. Some will typically talk about, things that are coming up much closer. And that's usually kind of it. A lot of times, the challenge with product roadmaps would be like, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we are going for. And the goal there is to kind of be able to say like, hey, like we are thinking in these areas. This is where we're thinking to move. This is what we want to do. I think you will rarely, most likely never see information like that about cameras. Cameras themselves, it makes no sense for a company to publish a roadmap of camera updates. There's too many variables, too many things that come into play as far as what a company's goal and designs are. So, yeah, you're just not going to see that kind of stuff. And as far as timelines go, honestly, with the internet discourse the way it's been over the last 2 years with every company and every product release across the board, it almost doesn't matter what the manufacturer says, it seems. Rumor sites, websites that comment on industry trends and stuff like that are what people tend to care about only, which is why I encourage you to do research. If you see something pop up somewhere and you know, people speculate about things over here. You know, you check across the board. And remember, at the core of it, nothing is true until the manufacturer ends up saying it one way or another, as far as things like updated products and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's about it. 6 says, inspired by Micro Four Nerd's recent post, I took out my G100 to shoot the New York City Xmas Windows display. Cannot figure out how to force EFC Shutter on. Manual implies that this should be possible. So, is my G100 charged? My G100 might not be charged, so I might not be able to show this on a G100. Yeah, my G100 is unfortunately not charged. Kind of another situation where I wish I had USB-C on it. Well, actually, it's because I also... This is just a G100. This is not a G100D. So basically, for the shutter mechanism, what you're going to be looking for is it's typically going to be under the camera icon. You're going to come down and you're going to look for shutter type. And you're going to make sure that this goes to EFC. The thing with the shutter in cameras like the G100, some of the older cameras have this, and even some of the other cameras from other manufacturers have shutter mechanisms like this. They're EFC up to a point, and then they kind of change into different release types depending on the shutter speed that you're choosing. I don't remember off the top of my head what the shutter speed rating is on that camera. I believe it's up to 1/500th, and then it's EFC. So, but if you use that menu under the photo option and go to, what was it called again? Shutter type. That's where you would select EFC to tell the camera, I want you to be in EFC. And then that's what it should work at. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. FC says, what equipment do you recommend to HDMI capture live view composite in action as a video? This is a really good question. Honestly, you can use pretty much any external recorder. If you're on the go and you've got like, you know, a Ninja 5, if you've got, you know, Video Assist 12G or whatever external HDMI recorder you've got, you fully have the capability to do, to capture the live composite building over HDMI. What's cool about it is that, you know, even in the photo option side of the camera, you have the ability to send a clean video signal out, because that's overall controlled by turning HDMI info on and off. The big thing to just kind of keep in mind is that in photo mode, the HDMI output is 1080p. So, you know, in many cases, that's probably not going to cause any kind of issue for most things, because you're going to be able to do the, you know, the kind of the capture, show everything building on the screen. But yeah, honestly, it's any external recorder. I could even do it here with the camera I've got because I'm plugged into a HDMI capture card into my computer. So then I could use OBS or Streamlabs or whatever software I want, even Elgato's software, to just capture that feed, and you'd be fine. Yeah, that's really all you need. Overlord, fortunately, I don't answer questions about future requests or things that people want to see in the future. So, sorry. DJ, can you tell us a bit about the plans and wills of the new app? When can we migrate into using one app for our cameras for all purposes? Yeah, so LUMIX Lab is the app that is designed to basically supersede LUMIX Sync and even the image app from years ago. Not all cameras have the hardware needed to, you know, kind of work the way we want them to work within the LUMIX Lab apps. So, you know, that's why LUMIX Sync is still listed for those older cameras. Heck, that's even why Image App is still listed, because there are a lot of people that have those older cameras, and the apps were designed for those cameras. But, like, what's the plans and wills for LUMIX Lab? The Lab app, we've already done, kind of like the one main update to start with, which is adding the remote control functionality for the S9. We've already stated that remote control and shutter release and all those other kinds of things are coming to the S5 Mark II, Mark IIX, GH7, and G9 Mark II. Those are listed on the webpage for LUMIX Lab, so those are coming. As time moves on, there's always improvements that we work to make with the app, right? One of the biggest things that we did when we launched that was also really put a lot of the emphasis on the real-time LUT functionality. The fact that there's a community built into that where we're constantly adding more and more LUTs. When we launched the app, there were only, I believe, 80 LUTs available from the community within the system. There's well over, I believe, I haven't done a recent count, I believe there's well over like 120 now since the launch. So, people are submitting, people that we've done a lot of work with, they are submitting and adding and providing LUTs to be on this page. I know Nick Driftwood just had a bunch of them put on there. So it's really about, kind of allowing you as a user to be able to get a faster workflow out of your cameras. While not everybody is doing, say, social media content where you need the fastest way to get an image off into a mobile device so it can be posted, we totally agree that there's a lot of people that is not relevant to. The fact that you have at your fingertips a tool that allows you to do quick adjustments to a photo, to create looks, to create styles that you want to use on your camera, and have it be, in my opinion, the easiest and most efficient way to go from, I have this look, I want it on my camera, and I want to be able to bake it in. That's kind of what's really, really solid about this. And that's really what we're looking at with it. We are building out the other functionality with it, as I said. So the newer cameras, everything running the newer processor, that's what's going to be coalesced behind the LUMIX Lab app. So, yeah. And as far as when can you migrate into using one app, I wish I had a timeline I could tell you guys. But we have committed that all of the current modern cameras are getting transitioned over to it. So, yeah, I wish I just had a timeline for you, but I don't, that I can share with you. McCary, wow, another year already. Thanks for all these streams. Yeah, it's been, I think, 5 years of doing these streams. This was probably the most challenging year of the last 5 to actually keep to a Thursday schedule. But working on some things that'll make it easier to keep to a Thursday schedule for next year. Rhett, good to see you here, Rhett. Where did my chat go? There it goes. Hey Sean, I know you can't talk about future products, but do you have any line of compact cameras you'd want updated wish list style? Maybe PDAF, LX10, LX100, or maybe something new? I really don't have kind of like wish list stuff. I think part of when you work for a manufacturer is that, you kind of, because I work so closely with our cameras, I really don't find myself wanting for anything, but that's just me. That's my style of use of these cameras and how I work with them. And my wishes and things like that, typically if there are things that I end up wanting to see in future cameras, y'all are the ones that end up actually kind of like really being the voices of those things, right? We talked about, I think it was last week's stream, a lot of people, like waveform being usable in photography mode. I would love to see that. I think it's an incredibly useful tool. So stuff like that would be really cool. As far as models go, and this is that reason why I really don't have that much of a comment here, is because I have access to all of our cameras. It's a very unique position, so I don't ever find myself sitting here for a want in that category. That's why I love this platform, is because it's giving you guys all a platform to be like, hey, this is what I want to see. And that gives us a lot of ideas. That gives me ideas to be like, hey, you know, I'm seeing a lot of people ask about this. This is something that our team should be aware of. And that's what this whole platform has done. You know, I use the example of, and again, I know you were talking about product, but, you know, really it's a lot on feature here. You know, the multiple frame guides, frame markers that we put on the S9, you know, that is a direct result of the feedback that people like Dustin and Caleb and Anson and a whole bunch of people I know that, you know, that we've had conversations with, and you guys in the chat. That update to the camera is specifically from what you guys all told us you wanted to be able to do. Frame markers are cool, but they were very limiting at the start. That's the kind of stuff that, you know, I see as, like, in future, the more you guys say that stuff, if you guys come up with cool ideas, a lot of us are just open, you know, because you guys have more experience in various areas of photography and videography that, you know, Matt, myself, Neil, those of us that work in the company don't. So we tend to lean on you guys for things that we think would make for cool future products that come out. That's a very non-committal answer, I know. DJ says, L-mount is still power zoom barren, which is surprising for a video focused brand among others who have recently launched theirs for their format. Opinion. I think to start with the categorization of the L-mount and LUMIX specifically as a video focused brand, I would challenge that if you look at the products that we've released over the last couple of years and the areas of which we've made improvements, the features that we offer, we are not just a video focused brand. Yes, we are incredibly well known for video. Yes, do we have a stronger reputation in videography? Of course. But there are a lot of improvements we've been doing in the photography side that a lot of people either get drowned out when they try to talk about it, or it's just easier to talk about the video side. So a lot of times you see a lot of major upgrades that talk the hybrid story, being able to use these cameras for multi-purpose. Photo and video generation, you know, people that are working in the industry these days, and it's been like this for at least the last decade, are increasingly being asked to be able to be relatively competent in both sides of content, photo and video. So when that comes to things like lenses, right? You know, you start looking at, well, what lenses do we need to make? How do we need to make them? What areas, what strengths can we bring to optics out there? You know, there's a common, you know, joke in the industry across the board of how many 50 millimeters does any lens mount require? Because 50 millimeters, you usually end up seeing like 5 or 6 of them for every camera brand. The fact is, each of them tend to offer something different. And when we look as a brand, one of our biggest, you know, setups here was taking that idea with the 1.8 series and by extension the 2.8 100mm macro. How do we make them a properly balanced hybrid lens so that they have the characteristics that videographers like, they have the form factor and the kind of compatibility that a photographer could see benefit in, and when you get to things like the 100mm, how do you fix a problem with that lens that photographers have when wanting to use a 100mm? You know, something with a very flat focal plane. That's really what drives it. When you talk about power zoom lenses and stuff like that, of course, you know, if you grab Matt, you know, and talk to him about power zooms, you talk to me about power zooms, would we love to see them? Heck yeah, I'd love to see a power zoom. But looking at the whole picture of the industry, you start looking and saying like, well, okay, if a power zoom were to come out, what focal length would you want to do? What point does it serve in the market? What do people need within these categories? Is there a product that matches the need for it? How do you deploy it? There are power zoom lenses out there that you have to bolt a piece of equipment onto to make them work, and that's cool and all, but it's not necessarily an elegant choice. So, my opinion in that is really just that, while others may be launching things like power zoom lenses and stuff like that, it's cool, for very specific use cases, but that's the kind of thing. They're very specific use case lenses. We have a lot of other areas, and we focus very heavily on hybrid use cases where power zoom lenses possibly could be a benefit, but on average, there's much bigger priorities, I'd say, at this particular point. But our team is always watching, always listening, what people are looking for. So know that, to throw back to that earlier question about, say roadmaps and stuff like this, like future product planning, our teams are always thinking about that stuff. No company is looking only 1 year out. They look many years out, and they're always working to try to find how can we build the best thing to serve what you, the photographer, videographer, need. And a lot of thought goes into that kind of stuff, so that when you get to the point when you're ready to release something like this, you know what it's going to serve, you know what it was built for, and you know that its release will be beneficial for you, the user. It's not just another throwaway, kind of like, hey, yeah, we updated it, cool, here you go, kind of thing. Let's see here. McCary, was there any comment from engineers for past requests or comments like multiple exposure or workaround, live view composite, or in-camera stacking? Wonder if you got anywhere or rejected. So no rejection on any of that stuff. Like we'd said, a lot of times those kinds of things, kind of like what I was just saying, as far as like features and firmware updates and all that kind of stuff, deploying a lot of that stuff can be a lot harder than it sounds, even if you've had it in previous cameras. When we make the major transition going from our previous engines to the new ones that are total ground up design to be able to run all the new functionality that we have, and you add in the fact, that we added PDAF to the cameras, so now you've got another piece of the puzzle that you have to be able to work around with. Sometimes certain features just either aren't compatible in their current state, and it takes time to be able to figure out, well, when can they be compatible? What kind of impact is made because you're on the new engines, that kind of stuff. So that's usually why that stuff takes long to be able to come out. And to be honest, stuff like that is not really things that you're ever going to hear from until it's ready to be released, that kind of stuff. So I can comfortably say, like, no idea is just rejected when it comes in. Thought and time is put through for each of these kinds of requests to say, like, what's the viability of it? How hard is it to do it? Is it something that requires a new camera to be able to do it? So it's always being looked at to improve. Things like live view composite in cameras like the S9, in some cases you run into where there may be limitations to the way the camera operates that eliminates you from being able to deploy a certain function. So there's always a push. That people like myself, like Matt, those that work, with us are always pushing for, the commentary that y'all make, so that we can build better products in the future and, update those that can be updated. So, yeah. Let's see here. Darrett, I believe you're a new viewer, or you just never commented before. What is your opinion on whether Lumix would benefit from a native anamorphic lens with AF and stabilization, or are there already ample options available from third-party manufacturers? This is an interesting question. Native anamorphic lenses. Anamorphic as it sits, it's a challenging question to answer. Autofocus anamorphic lenses. I believe there are, 2 on the market that exist. And they're both, if I remember correctly, 133 anamorphics, which means realistically you're going to use them with a 16:9 sensor. I don't believe they're designed for full frame coverage. I think they're Super 35 coverage. It's an interesting idea. It's very complex to be able to make an autofocusing anamorphic lens. To be able to account for all of the optic characteristics that you have to keep in mind when working with an anamorphic lens. And pretty much no other manufacturer, I think, really has the tools to support proper anamorphic shooting in the way that we do. So, all of that being said, opinions on whether or not we'd benefit from a native anamorphic, I mean, sure, there would be a benefit because you'd have a native anamorphic lens. It'd be from the manufacturer. Likelihood of it, that's debatable. Whether or not it has AF, that's another debatable point. Stabilization, not going to happen in an anamorphic lens. If you ever look at actually how anamorphic lenses are built and how complex the optic paths are, good luck introducing a stabilization unit into it that doesn't just massively throw off things like the rolling shutter, the jello effect, because of how it emphasizes those effects. It's one of the reasons why with our cameras we have tuned stabilization specifically for anamorphic. And again, it's also why there's no stabilized anamorphic lenses anyway. So you probably would never see that kind of stuff. But as far as the industry goes, with what's available today, I'm just looking to see, do I have it on my desk? I don't. There are really cool anamorphic options out there. Surrey with the Saturn series, Atlas if you want to go to like the big, huge, well, not huge, but you want to go for like the bigger, PL cinema style lenses, just to name a couple of them. I think Blazar makes a whole bunch of them too. There are so many options out there too. It's one of the fastest growing, I think, optics sides in the industry. But it's none of them still kind of address, like how we do, the actual usability side of it. It's one thing to have an anamorphic lens, but if you always have to look at squeezed footage, you have no way to de-squeeze it. That can impart a lot of challenges to capturing. People want things like being able to have clinically sharp lenses in a lot of cases. That's a generalization. I know in a lot of video cases you don't. That's a whole nother area. Anamorphic lenses when it comes to photography. There's a huge use case for anamorphics in photography. In fact, I'm working on playing around with a couple anamorphic lenses right now from a photographic perspective. But then in the photographic perspective, you really don't have as much tools as well because anamorphics are video lenses. Yeah, so it would be cool. I think there are a ton of options that you have available and all various different price points if you want to even get into it. As far as an actual manufacturer making it, like us, that's where I go to my typical response. I know it sounds like a broken record sometimes, but you tell us. You want to see optics like that. You want to see those things from first party. Tell us. Let us know in the comments on our video after they're posted. The LUMIX Live comment section after after these videos are done live is a huge resource for the engineering teams to say, hey, this is what people are telling us they want to see. Doesn't always mean we're going to be able to reply to those comments or things like that, but you can use that as a place to say, hey, this is an idea I have. This is something I want to see you guys do. Drop it there and know that we see them. So yeah. Pedro, Lumix friends, here are my Christmas wishes for the new S series. A series of prime lenses, not S like Nikon has, with more 3D pop. Zeiss entering the LMAT Alliance. Interesting wishes. Luis, the S5 II, I really need some little upgrades. Auto white balance using Godox flash system is funny. Some are cold, some are warm. We need a C button for AFC and AFS single point. Better subject tracking. Okay. Automant. When I turn on my GH7, I have a big delay for 10 seconds till I'm able to record. This is a problem with my camera. And if this can be fixed with firmware updates, thanks. Automant, the first thing, the first question I would ask you, or first couple questions I'd ask you. So one, are you using an SSD for your storage, or are you using internal cards? If you're using internal cards, are you using CF Express, are you using SD cards? If so, what cards are they? Are they on our validated list? Same with an SSD. When it comes to SSDs, what USB cables are you using? Thing to remember, and the reason why I go to SSD first is because I've heard a couple people have a similar challenge, but we were able to resolve it. And the problem was they were using SSDs that were not ones that we had tested. That's not a guarantee that that's, always going to be the problem. They were using SSDs that we didn't have validated. And the problem there is that the ones that we have validated, we know have no problem. They don't impart any issues on the camera because external SSDs require power and initialization. You can run into problems where maybe that drive itself, is just not really up to the task. Maybe it's trying to draw too much power. Maybe, the controller that drive uses is not really up to snuff and it's, slower than need be. So that slows the camera down. These are similar things that you run into with SD and CF Express cards. The reason we put out a list of tested and validated cards is because we've tested them, we validated, we know from a speed perspective, they meet everything that we need. We know from a performance and reliability perspective, they function the way they need to, or the way they are supposed to based on the standards. So I would check those things first. A 10-second delay is ridiculously long if that's what you're getting, for a startup. So I would check your media first. Let's see here. Where did the questions go? Luis, in the most important update, as a wedding photographer with the S5 IIX, please image review has to be faster. Use V90 and sometimes can take 4 seconds to review a picture. Yeah, I will pass a lot of that stuff on, so. Halifax, does TTL work with off-camera flash? Using a GH7 Godox SK400II, as a slave in a Godox TT350 as a master. TTL gets interesting off-camera. And the reason why I say interesting off-camera is because the various flashes. So when you're mixing multiple different models of flash, and this is one of the things that I'm going to talk about next week with the strobe conversation, because as a little sneak peek, I'll be using a couple combinations of things. So things like this 8300, the X3 trigger, and where the heck are the other ones? And the MF12s. MF12s? Yeah, the MF12, like the macro flashes. You can run into situations where, because modern flashes have firmware updates, there may be communication challenges between certain things that can throw things like TTL off. They can even throw like high-speed sync off, depending on what firmware your flash has. So there's not really a thing that would say like, no, TTL won't work with off-camera flash. It just gets more complicated with more modern flashes. And to be fair, that's a stupid phrase. To also point out from our side, our flash compatibility works on the Olympus TTL system. So that's why if you want to use a flash with our cameras, you use an O variant from Godox. Some products you'll see now they're starting to list Panasonic as well. that can be where you kind of just run into, you know, some of those problems. I would highly suggest with the flashes that you're using, double check, make sure that the firmware is up to date on them, because that's usually the number one thing to test. I know TTL worked when I used the X Pro trigger from Godox and using the these strobes, and even using the V860 series. I know TTL worked off camera. The thing I'm not sure of is if mixing the combination of strobes that you're using could be throwing a wrench in it. Yeah, that's where I would check first. Halifax. Sixth, G100 EFC is always grayed out in the menu, no matter what shutter speed I set in shutter priority, nor can I figure out the precise setup where gray out is removed. Manual doesn't help. Sixth, I will get my G100 on charge. You can drop your comment, your chat comment in the comment section after the video posts. I'll try to reply there with steps to make sure, and like kind of troubleshooting to see what may be blocking EFC from being on all the time. I just have to get the camera charged up to be able to go through the menus for you. Sebastian, I currently have the GH5. I'm looking to upgrade to the S5 IIX. I'm unsure if it's worth the upgrade. I'm a videographer. What does the S5 IIX have that the GH5 doesn't? Is it a good upgrade? This is going to be really up to the type of shooting you do. Couple things in the positive court for the S5 IIX, or the S5 II series. It's full frame camera. So you're going to get, markedly better low light performance, which means you can shoot at higher ISOs, and you get the benefit for that. I don't want to get into the equivalency side of the conversation, but it is going to be better. You get phase autofocus. So if you are ever struggling with autofocus on the GH5, you're going to have a much better, situation with the S5 Mark II series. Frame rates, you get access to, a lot of the similar frame rates that you have on a GH5. There are still some on the GH5 that are better. But like I said, you have the PDAF options. On an X, the nice benefits you get is that you're still maintaining the all-intra codecs. You're gaining the ProRes options, and you're gaining things like SSD recording options. So those are a lot of the positives for the S5 Mark II series. And you also get the ability to play around with depth of field maybe a little bit easier. You have a little bit faster lenses that can do more separation for you. Pros on sticking with a GH series camera, so maybe upgrading to a GH7 instead of, kind of keeping in micro four thirds, is that one, if you already have a bunch of micro four thirds lenses and you're good with the lenses you have, a GH7 could be a better upgrade path. You get faster frame rate, you get oversampled 4K 120, you get no crop 4K 60, 4K 120 out of that camera. You get open gate with it. You get a much more, kind of fleshed out way of shooting open gate versus the way the GH5 did. You get internal RAW recording on the GH7. You get ProRes. You get all intra. You get a much better stabilizer. You get, in my opinion, a better, kind of body to work with for the camera. You get access to 32-bit float. So in general, you're getting a lot more product, and you save yourself a couple of things by not going into full frame. Because while vast majority of people will say, you have to go full frame, there's a reason Micro Four Thirds still exists. It still has a lot of benefits over what you can get in some full frame cameras, like the no crop 4K 120. There are very few cameras, even in full frame, that have that. Especially the fact that cameras that do have quote unquote uncropped 4K 120 in the full frame side are typically bin and skipped. So the quality may not always be the best there. Same with things like 4K 60. You see a lot of cameras that may have, full frame 4K 60, but then when you really dig into it, it's binned and skipped, which means that it's softer. It's not as sharp as it should be. So oversampling is a better choice, which is something the GH7 gives you. But most importantly, for someone like yourself, you don't end up having to change your lens mounts. You have all your lenses available, so you may not have to invest in new lenses. If you go to Cine D did a dynamic range test on the GH7 and found that it hangs right up there with many of the cameras that are multiples of the cost of the GH7. I don't want to say names. I encourage you to go take a look at Cine D and look at their write-up of the GH7 from their lab testing, and you'll see that dynamic range is not a problem, even in a Micro Four Thirds camera versus some full-frame cameras. So to say that the S5 IIX, is it a good upgrade? Yes, it is a good upgrade in some cases. But you have to look at what you're capturing, what you're creating, and kind of determine what is more important for you. You'd already said that you're a videographer, so it comes into where, like, do you need high frame rates? Do you want really sharp high frame rates? Do you want, industry-leading stabilization? Do you need ProRes? Do you want all intra? Do you need raw internal video recording? Those are all the kind of questions that I would, kind of recommend you ask yourself, and understand that if you've already got lenses and you're already used to the GH platform, a GH7 would be a very kind of reasonable upgrade to make, because it's a substantial improvement and it's potentially less expensive for you to kind of upgrade that path. Goldbook. There are tons of dedicated users waiting for any confirmation if we'll ever get compatibility with Capture One tethering. Can you please just give us any indication that it will ever happen? I wish I had information about Capture One. I like Capture One as an editing software. I still love my Adobe editing software as well. Yeah, I wish I could give you information. I wish I knew information about that side. So, sorry. Sir. Hi, I'm Brett from Elgato. We've had a long time ago. Just wondering if you'd receive my emails, trying to get your stream again. Thank you for reaching out, Brett. Let me double check my emails right after this broadcast. This is a good way to grab me if I haven't replied to an email. I'm not always the best at replying to emails sometimes, everybody. I think all of us kind of run into those things sometimes. But yeah, Brett, thanks for reminding me. I will check my emails. Rhett, who names the cameras? I always wondered how those discussions come up. What comes first, the camera or the name? Or even... names for cameras. That's usually handled in Japan. Sometimes we get some input on, like, hey, we'd really prefer to see maybe this as a name or that as a name. Yeah, it's usually collective design teams, stuff like that. So, but a lot of thought does go into the naming of products. I can tell you that. I've seen what goes into it. I'm not at liberty of necessarily talking about a lot of that stuff, but a lot of discussions go into what a product is named. So, we're going to manufacture anamorphic adapter that works really well. I imagine getting that adapter even like a 133 or a 1.5. Interesting. DJ, do you feel like some of the technology demands from users might feel a little too risky in terms of time and spending? Do you think Lumix market share limits its portfolio size? So first part of your question, do you feel like some of the technology demands from users might feel a little too risky in terms of time and spending? I mean, technology demands from or requests from any user base is always going to be, well, maybe not always. Most of the time, it's pushing way further than people may think the technology is actually ready to be, right? So yeah, there's always risk in, some of the latest bleeding edge technologies that are out there. Does that, does that come into play for, too risky for time and spending? Decisions are made based on what's right for the product. So I think, people look at our, kind of release cycle across the board with our cameras, and you guys know that, like, we don't chase, an update every single year. We're not like some of the others where it's like we're only going to do a minor little upgrade and then sell a new camera that, something could likely have been a firmware update kind of thing. We update when we have a reason to upgrade a camera, for an upgraded physical product. So that lets us, think about what we want to upgrade. That lets us actually do more due diligence in, well, how does this feature affect? How does this feature actually benefit, someone when they're going to use our cameras? So when you look at it that way, you say, like, looking at, do you think Lumix market share limits its portfolio size? No. People, I think, have a fundamental non-understanding of how company and products can work. I don't want to say always, because there are always some examples that you can pull where market size may say why you can and can't do certain things. We build what we want to build, what we understand from the market, from you, the community, what photographers and videographers want and need within their kind of areas of use, and we build them to the best that the technology allows that we use. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that part of it. So what time are we at? 57. I got time for like 3 more questions, and then I'll have to wrap up today. There's a lot of really cool questions, everybody. If I don't get to your question, because I can tell that I'm only like 2/3 of the way down the chat that I still have left. If I don't get to your question, drop it in the comment section after the video is posted, and I'll try to go through over the next couple of days and address questions where I can. Al says 2024 gave the highly underrated GH7 many advancements in this camera. The most unexpected was Arilog. How's Lumix experience of it? Worth it, or not? Not worth such radical things again. The Arilog upgrade for the GH7 was like, it's freaking awesome. I think as more people have been using it and kind of getting it, you start to kind of really understand that, Arilog is a system or a setup that was designed so that you have compatibility in with a workflow. Yes, you have compatibility to build in with other cameras, with the Arri, the Alexa Mini, right? You have the ability to match in with those cameras, and that's cool. That's great for a production studio that needs a crash cam or something, like, because it's easier to wreck a GH7 than it is to demolish an Arri. So there's been a ton of benefit there. I mean, the response we got at Cinegear when we launched that and we showed that product off, and the conversations that Matt and I had with various studios and people that were picking these cameras up because of that has been awesome. In the what I would call general side, so this is basically anyone outside of like the Hollywood kind of major production side, Arilog is one of those things that the people that are using it are really getting the benefit of it because of their workflow, because of what Arri has built for the looks, their entire look library, the way they handle working with LUTs in post, since it's a log-to-log workflow versus something like how the Vlog system works. So it's been incredibly well received. It's one of the cooler things I think that we've done, and we're not afraid to do stuff like that, and I don't foresee that ever changing. I think is a fair way to kind of put that. Rhett says, I can't remember if I've asked this, but I've had issues with monitors letterboxing my anamorphic footage on anything but 2x lenses. Is this just an HDMI limitation? It can be. It totally depends on the monitor that you're using. So depending on how the signal is being viewed from the monitor is where you can get like the letterbox or the pillar boxes, which is a more common one that we hear. So it's usually just a combination of what the monitor can see and do and what the monitor is set up to do. Early days of doing, kind of anamorphic D-squeeze on a monitor, you'd run into where, if you were in 4:3, so if you're shooting in a 4:3 ratio and you're outputting this to, an Atomos recorder, but you're not doing it in RAW, you are sending a 4:3 image in a 16:9 container. So when it gets to the monitor and the monitor does the D-squeeze, you get pillar boxes, which means it's going to shrink everything down because the monitor is only recording a 3840 by 2160 with an image only presenting in the 4:3 center area for Micro Four Thirds. Even in full frame, you run into that. That's usually what the cause is with it. So, McCary, is Live View Composite a LUMIX invention or co-developed with OM? Could a Live ND come to LUMIX? Also, the pre-capture in 4K photos seemed like a LUMIX invention, but now everyone does it. My understanding is Live View Composite, what we do is solely our design for our implementation. Anything outside of that, you'd have to talk to an engineer that kind of writes that line of code for us, and that kind of process for it. So yeah, that's about as much as I know. Could Live ND come to LUMIX? I mean, I don't see why concepts like that couldn't. So is it likely to come? I don't know. I don't think something like that is high on a priority list. But it's an interesting concept. And then the pre-capture in 4K photos seemed like a LUMIX invention, but now everyone does it. We were the first to do, what we called 4K photo. So being able to do a video stream in an interchangeable lens camera that allowed you to extract still frames out of it with metadata embedded into those photos. I remember actually sitting in our offices when one of our competitors announced a feature that was very similar to what we had been doing in entry-level cameras for quite a while. And it was just interesting seeing how, kind of the industry looked at it and was like, oh, that's kind of a cool feature. And, we did get our call outs of, well, yeah, but this is something they've been doing forever. So, pre-capture, 4K photo, that kind of concept. I mean, yeah, we've been doing it for a while. That's one of those things that I would say, like, we mentioned before that we always get known as a video brand first, but when you look back at things that didn't exist until we started doing them, pre-burst for stills was something we did well before many of the other brands, if not all of the other brands had done. And now that's kind of a standard thing. But because ours was JPEG at the beginning, it was derived from a video file, photographers may not always look at that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's for a photographer out of it. So, all right, cool. I got time for one more question. And then unfortunately I do have to call the stream today because I do have another meeting I have to jump to. But yeah, so, let's find a good question. Seen some, so from Rhett, I've seen some wish lists, so I guess I'd hope for more USB-C functions or even multiple USB-Cs as well as Bluetooth pairing with things like wireless headphones. Is that stuff even possible? In theory, you can say things are possible. I don't think that's a deniable statement. As far as things like more USB-C functions, I know we've gotten questions about things like UVC, multiple, like being able to use a dock on the USB-C connection so you can power end data transfer. We've had questions like that a lot, and we've brought it up to the engineering team. I think the biggest thing to remember, though, is that we are one of, I believe, 2 companies in the quote-unquote consumer space that allow USB-C recording for storage. I don't think, as far as I remember, none of the other major manufacturers are doing it. So it's a relatively unique challenge for us. But, you know, being able to do that kind of stuff, we have talked to our engineers to say, like, hey, is this something possible? Like, what would be required for that to happen? Multiple USBs, that's always something that gets brought up to teams as well. You run into some questions of, like, well, how do you build them into a camera? Where do you put them? If you want to have all of the other ports as well. So, you know, those kind of questions always come up. Bluetooth pairing with things like wireless headphones. This has been talked about a lot. I know I've had a lot of conversations with it. I know Matt has had a lot of conversations with it. There's a couple things that people have to remember. The reason why the Bluetooth headphone experience is so good on your mobile devices, whether it's an Android or an Apple device, is typically because the SoC that you are using in the phone has the ability for low latency or extra low latency connections for Bluetooth headphones. A lot of times that can be something that's like, you know, it's a Qualcomm specific technology, and cameras don't run SoCs like that. So in order to really do things like Bluetooth headphones or Bluetooth wire, you know, audio monitoring would require very specific hardware to make sure that your latency isn't a problem. Think of how many times, if you read online, or maybe you've run into this before, where HDMI latency is a problem for you. And that can be only, you know, maybe 1 or 2 frames out from where you want it to be. While audio can be 400, 500 milliseconds out. And human perception is, I believe, around 100 milliseconds. So audio monitoring is a very, very challenging thing to figure out in cameras. My understanding, I don't think any current camera that's been built or out there right now really is going to have the hardware needed to support, you know, proper what people would expect the experience to be for Bluetooth audio monitoring in a camera, because they're not going to be as low latency as you can get on a mobile device. So, doesn't mean that it's impossible. Just means that most likely in current products, you're probably not going to see that kind of thing. So, cool. So, with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. I am sorry if I didn't get to your question. Like I said, if you do still have your question, copy it down into the comments field after the video is posted. This way I can take a look at it and see if I can answer it via text, like via chat, or maybe it's something that we address during the Q&A section of next week's live stream. As a reminder, next week's stream is going to be partially pre-recorded. It will be about flashes, so studio flash, on-camera flashes, remote flash, all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm going to try to go over about as much as I can with the current state of triggers and the Godox strobes that I have. How to use them, how I use them, how I kind of work around certain things with it. And yeah, hopefully that's a good stream for y'all to learn some stuff off of. Other than that, yeah, thank you everybody for an amazing year of LUMIX Live, and the chats, the comments, the interactions that you all have had with us. It's amazing. It's the same every year. You guys all surprise me with the questions that you provide, the feedback that you give us. It's amazing. We're going to have a really fun 2025, but, you know, we're really excited also for a little bit of a break over the next couple of weeks. So for a little bit of programming info, like I said, next week's stream is going to be partially pre-recorded with a live Q&A at the end of it. The following week, which is going to be January 2nd, will be a fully pre-recorded stream. That one prepping to be out at CES. The following week on the 9th will most likely also be a pre-recorded stream as well. So we would likely be back to actual live streams on the 16th. So that would be the week after CES. Yeah. Other than that, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Thanks for an amazing year. I hope those that celebrate have a great holiday for next week. If you've got time off, I hope you enjoy your time off with family and friends. Get out there, capture some really cool images. Share to us on social. Let us know what y'all are doing. It's really just what's so cool about this medium is that we're all visual creatives, storytellers, that kind of thing, and y'all make some amazing stories that I've seen. Yeah, other than that, yeah, great weekend, great holiday off if you have it, and I will see you next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on LUMIX Live. Later, all.